Welcome back. Now, as we reflect on Nelson Mandela Day, the former statesman legacy is that of courage and transformation. And while there are many attempts to drive transformation in the country, it is evident that B-BBEE scorecards have not advanced the agenda as much as it appears to have in theory. With that said, the Nedbank Top Empowerment Conference wraps up today, and key on the agenda, transformation that transcends legislation. Kershini Govender, who's Executive Head of Transformation and Strategy at Nedbank, joins us with more insight. Kershini, thank you for your time, and a good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Very keen maybe to first maybe find out about, just the thoughts, the conversations that are being had at the Empowerment Conference with regards to issues of transformation in South Africa today.
I think I'm losing you.
Okay, we'll try again. I'm just keen to reflect. Yes, do I sound better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Wonderful. Can you just maybe reflect on some of the conversations that have been had at the Top Empowerment Conference with regards to transformation in South Africa? 30 years into democracy, what are the conversations in the room?
Thank you very much. So I think it's a mixed bag. Whilst people do acknowledge, that we are a democracy 30 years later, yes, there has been progress, but there's also been regress. And I think, unfortunately, where we are now, the regress is a bit more higher on the agenda than the progress that has been made. But having said that, I think the sentiment is extremely positive at the conference itself. People are enjoying the dialogue. We even had people parking on the road yesterday because it was so oversubscribed. But I think what we can all agree is that sentiment alone will not shift the dial. We do need action. So I think that's very much where people are. And of course, a lot of focus on women empowerment, diversity, and not diversity, equity, and inclusion, but more diversity and belonging, which is a bit different to just, equity and inclusion. But really, very good conversations thus far, also highlighting how brands should transform and what should be happening from a transformation in terms of branding, advertising, the partners you choose, and how do we as a bank also push the envelope with our agency partners for them to start transforming. So really great conversations thus far.
Absolutely, sounds like interesting stuff. I want to reflect on those areas of regression and progress. I think they're very important for us as we take stock here, specifically in this year. I think it's very, apt. Let's talk about where we are seeing a progress and where we are seeing a regression.
Sure. So I think, and a lot of this is also based on reports that are available. So if I just take from an overall landscape perspective, some of you may have heard of the Sanlam Gauge report. Okay. So in the Sanlam Gauge report, which measures industries across, it will probably tell you industries are at a level 2 on average. If you were to double click on that, and then you look specifically at banking, and we look at just the top 6 banks, if you want to call them that, we are actually all at a level 1 in terms of BEE. And so if you just look at those 2 data points, so I think where we are doing well is in terms of our complying and reporting as listed companies. Because remember, this checks listed companies. So obviously the areas that we are progressing in is definitely enterprise and supply development, procuring more from Black-owned, Black woman-owned enterprises. Of course, socioeconomic development, we're always doing well in that. I think skills development, we are also doing well in that. The pain points remain, BEE ownership and management control and employment equity. So I think that's where you'll find a lot of the focus in terms of the pain points. Depending on which report you read as well, they might show a regression on skills development, but not in the banking sector.
Interesting indeed. Of course, an important part of us thinking of transformation here in South Africa, Kershini, is really looking beyond the scorecard. So literally looking beyond these issues of ESD and ownership and CSI and the likes. And I'm trying to gauge where we are in terms of that. What it does sound like is that even 30 years post-democracy, we don't quite have the buy-in of all stakeholders with regards to why transformation is an important part of South Africa's reality.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is also the contention around BEE and the corruption that actually even corrupts the intent and the messaging of BEE specifically. So I think from our perspective, I mean, we are definitely a purpose-led organization. We really advance purpose-led transformation, which is way beyond the scorecard. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. So if you look at the youth unemployment problem in the country, we are one of the big supporters of the Youth Employment Services Program. And since inception in 2019, we've provided opportunities for more than 13,500 unemployed Black youth. Our compliance target for absorption is actually 4 times higher what is required. And when you look at the YES program from an overall perspective, it's pumped back about 7 billion into the economy. So that's just one example of over and above the scorecard. It's actually got nothing to do with the scorecard. And then, of course, you can take other examples as well, where some of our suppliers on the enterprise and supply development program, because we get 4 points for enterprise development on the scorecard, the box is ticked, but we go further and we put some of them on the program. I mean, the one improved her turnover from 300,000 in year one to more than 15 million in year five as a result of that program, because it's going beyond just the scorecard. It's giving you training on business planning, financial planning, as well as coaching and mentorship.
I'm also keen to find out if, in the room, the urgency of transformation wasn't all brought up. I think if you look at the levels of inequality, violence that we have in South Africa, the looming risk of unrest at any given point, we are seeing us head into a time where transformation isn't a nice to have, it's an absolute necessity. We need to bring a lot more people into the economy. Was that emphasized at all? And I'm keen to find out about even the way forward, the plan here, considering also the contention, as you've mentioned, with B-BBEE as a policy.
Yeah, so I think everyone does agree that the intent and the strategy of BEE should remain, because it was intended to mobilize the energy of South Africans so that more of them can participate in the formal economy. I think what there's violent agreement on is things like the corruption, load shedding, all of these things, which, by the way, should not have happened. But unfortunately, they have happened. So now I think a lot of people are in the space of, it is what it is, but now we need to move on. How do we get together to progress South Africa forward? So we are still very much, and the sentiment in the room is very much that transformation and BEE stays, but how it is implemented needs to shift. Behavior is wrong, corruption is wrong. Those things need to be challenged and dealt with. So that's sort of where people are at.
Very interesting indeed. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Mandela Day to unpack an important file in South Africa, Kershini. That was Kershini Govender, Executive Head of Transformation and Strategy at Nedbank.